Today on the channel, let's return to the Kyle Peterson Top 5. In today's video, we're counting down an all-timer, one of my all-time favorite characters. We're talking about Destro from G.I. Joe.
And the spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Welcome everyone, Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for another edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, a weekly countdown series where we're counting down my top 5 favorites of something. And this is part of the Kyle Peterson 2.0 YouTube channel, the second channel that we're doing here. So if you haven't subscribed to this one yet, what are you waiting for? Let's get that one done. And of course, we do a weekly top 5 on the other channel as well. That is going to be wrestling related. This one, we can let our hair down and we can do different things over here. We can do different things like G.I. Joe. We can do He-Man, Thundercats, anything we really want to do. Of course, Iron Maiden, we can do an Iron Maiden top 5 we wanted to over here on this channel. And we may do all of that, and I guess we will do all of that eventually. But today's top 5 is an extra special one. It is one of my all-time favorite characters from the 80s. Any generation, really. It is talking about Destro, the enemy. Of course, always thought of as kind of the second command to Cobra Commander back in the day. Of course, before Serpentor came into the mix, Globulus, all that kind of stuff. But Destro, a big-time bad guy in the 80s G.I. Joe, and especially in my toy fig feds from when I was a kid all the way up till now. So Destro, a definite all-timer, one of my all-time favorite characters. And of course, we're going to do this top 5 like we do all the other top 5s on the channel. We're going to start at number 5, work our way to number 1. Number 1 being my favorite Destro figure of all time. Gonna ask you to put your list in the comments down below. And this could be one of the most controversial top 5s of all time, as I think a lot of people are gonna take issue with my top 5. But you know what? It's my top 5. It's not right, it's not wrong. Yours is the same way. But there's gonna be people that are gonna be a little upset with my top 5, I think. But there's only one way to find out. I guess let's get into it. Let's start it off at number 5. We begin the Destro top 5 at, of course, number 5, and we start off with the controversy right away. As my number 5 selection, we go to the G.I. Joe Classified Series, but not to the retro one, no, not to the original Classified Series one. We go to the fan channel exclusive Profit Director Destro, a.k.a. Pimp Daddy Destro, a very controversial one from when it was first released back in, back in the day. I want to say the 25th anniversary series, but I think there was one even before that as well. But we did get him. We got a lot of Destros in that 25th anniversary series, of course. But this one was extra special. Now, I can understand a lot of people's anger with this one at the time because it was so early on in the Classified series line. This, I believe, might have been the first fan channel exclusive from the Classified line. So a bit of a deep cut, a bit of a weird kind of mix here, but man, one I am here for all day long. I absolutely love Destro. It is gold instead of silver. I love the kind of leopard print cape he's got going on. I love the money that's on fire. You get the briefcase. Just a very, very cool rendition of Destro, but I totally understand why this one is not for everybody, but I can't help but smile when I see this one. He's got the sunglasses on, just an all-around cool figure, but definitely a strange twist and turn for the Destro character, especially when your first version of this was released back in the day, but it's really grown on me, so much so, it comes in at number 5 of my top 5 Destro list. The number 4 selection in the Destro top 5 is a fairly recent Destro. Maybe, I was going to say it's the most recent Destro we've unboxed on the channel. That is not the case, but we've unboxed it this year on the channel. This is a fairly new one. I think you can still go to the Entertainment Earths of the world, the Big Bad Toy Stores, link in the description below, as I always do say, and pick this one up. I believe one of those sites probably still has this one, and this is one of those ones that made me a believer in a line, and I'm going to buy everything here on out from this line. What are we talking about? Well, we're going going to Mezco. We're going to Mezco 112th. Destro, and I could see this being number one on a lot of lists because you get a lot of bells and whistles with this Destro. Tons and tons of accessories, tons of weapons, extra heads, all that kind of stuff. Of course, all the articulation, tons of hands. You get even soft goods on Destro. Just an absolute all-timer of a Destro figure. I could never argue with anybody. I can't argue with anybody. It's your list, like we always say. But if you had this at number one, it's tough to say, hey, because this is just an overwhelmingly cool figure. Almost too much. Sometimes we get these figures that have 3 or 4 heads. It's almost too much stuff for us. Maybe you're different than me, but I'm just like, gosh, there's too many options. It's making my head spin. Sometimes I want it a little bit more simple, and that's where this one kind of goes, but still very cool. That's why it's at number 4 for me. Not quite the nostalgia factor for this one, as it's a fairly new release, but definitely cool. Definitely an all-timer Destro, and like I said, I could easily see someone having this as their number 1 Destro figure of all time. But for me, this one coming in at number 4. We've hit the halfway point in our Destro Top 5 countdown. You got your list together? Make sure you put it in the comments down below. But for the number 3 Destro selection, we're throwing it all the way back. For the majority of people that are of my age bracket, you definitely had this or you knew someone that did have this figure. It is the original G.I. Joe 3 3/4 Destro, with the big old Destro, the enemy, splattered right on the front, the iconic artwork, and of course, the iconic figure, and I've talked about it on the channel before. I lived in a house. I had to go for lunch in the summer. It was summertime, playing outside my yard. They were doing some work in the dirt and stuff. Had a big hole going on. I was playing on the edge of it with my fingers, or my figures, both maybe, but I was playing with that Destro figure, and I had to go in for lunch. And I think it was a banquet chicken pot pie. Oh, nothing better on a warm summer day than a banquet chicken pot pie. Just burn the roof of your mouth and you're off to the races the rest of the day. But went back out, and unfortunately we had a tragic cave-in, and Kyle searched. Young Kyle searched with his little hands. He searched with his little hands trying to find this Destro. Finally just had to give up the fight. I could not find my Destro figure, and now that I'm explaining the story again, could a random kid came strolling through my yard and stole this Destro, or is he forever buried in that spot, and I know exactly where that spot is? I will search that spot out. I will go there. Unfortunately, the people that own the house now, I drive by every once in a while really slow, just kind of peer out the window, kind of case the joint a little bit, but they built this big old Fort Knox fence, so a little extra toughness there, and if they catch me, they'll probably put razor wire over the top. But I'm thinking about going there in the middle of the night some night with a shovel, an excavator helmet with a little light bulb, and I'm going to free my Destro figure. I'm going to do that. But definitely an all-timer of a Destro figure. That's why he's here at number 3. Nostalgia running wild with this Destro, and it was such a game changer into my figure fed when I was a little kid playing with these. Of course, you had to have your Cobra Commander. I had to have Major Blood, another favorite of mine, and then Destro. Those were the tippy top guys at the time. Had to have them to combat the Joes, and Destro was an absolute game changer to have as a little kid, and still a game changer all these years later. So coming in at number 3, the original G.I. Joe Destro. Dangerously close to the end of the top 5 list. We're at the number 2 spot, and the number 2 one could be another controversial one, but not as controversial as number 1. We'll get to that in a second. We got to go through number 2, and number 2 is the most recent-ish. Recent-ish? It kind of feels that way. Destro figure we've unboxed here on the channel. This one coming to us from our friends over at Super 7. This is the Ultimate Edition Destro. Now, I can see some people saying, no way, that's not on my list, because I know Super 7, they're very polarizing to sections of the figure community because they don't have all the articulation, bells, and whistles. I've explained my thought process on that. I'm not playing, I'm not a real toy photographer. I don't need all that extra articulation, but what I do need is this looking exactly like I imagined G.I. Joes as a kid, walking right off the cartoon into my hands, and Destro does that absolutely perfectly. This looks like Destro just crawled out of my TV screen and came to have a little discussion with me, maybe hunt that original figure we lost, who knows, but I absolutely love this Destro figure. Just an all-timer here. This is one of the coolest figures that Super 7 has made in a couple of years, if you ask me. I just absolutely love this. Did have a San Diego Comic-Con figure recently of the Red Jackal, his other kind of persona there from across the sea, as they would say. Weezer would say across the sea. But definitely a cool one over there. This one, though, a little bit more iconic, even more cooler. Just love this figure from the get-go. Like I said, I understand it's not for everybody, but once again, this is my list. This is my Super 7 Destro. He's coming in at number 2 in my top 5 Destro figures of all time, which means only one thing. There's only one left to go. Who is it? What is it? Stay tuned. Here we go. The time has come. We're at the number 1 Destro figure of all time as voted by me. Make sure you put your list in the comments down below. But Destro coming in hot at number 1, an absolute all-timer for me. And let me set the table here. I talked about at number 3, the Destro I lost as a little kid, really ruining a couple of years of my playing days. I didn't have a Destro. I didn't have that second guy in command. I had to use kind of the Major Bloods of the world, the Dr. Mindbenders of the world, as kind of that second guy, all along knowing, man, I need that Destro. And you guys remember back in the day, there was no internet. There was no way to recapture that Destro unless you got lucky at a garage sale or you had a friend that didn't want their Destro anymore, and no kids were giving up their Destro figure. That wasn't happening. So I just had to go without a Destro for a couple of years until one fateful day that Destro came back out, but we got a whole new look to Destro here. What is it? Well, we're going back to the original G.I. Joe Hasbro line. We're going to the little 2-in-1. We got the Destro with his despoiler, his little air chariot, his iron grenaders. And of course, this Destro figure, definitely controversial. A lot of people say, if it's not a silver mask, it's not Destro. Well, to little Kyle, this is the Destro I had the most fun with in all my years of playing. I love that Destro got his own little chariot like a young Serpentor. I love the gold mask to make him feel like, hey, he was second place. Hey, I'm gold. Now I'm the man, and I'm leading this Iron Grenaders team, and I loved playing as a kid. I'd have Cobra Commander and his team. I'd have the Iron Grenaders with Destro. I had Serpentor and his team. It was interfeuding with Cobra, and sometimes Destro would join up with the Joes because, hey, we got a common enemy in Cobra Commander or Serpentor here. So a lot of fun playing days with this one. But to get Destro with a cape like a young Lando Calrissian, a sword, a chariot, a gold head, man, an absolute all-timer. And nostalgia is one of the things that make these top 5 lists. Is it the greatest figure as far as posability, as far as innovation, things like that? No, but to a childhood's mind, a child's mind playing with his toys, this was an all-timer. This was an extremely fun toy way back then. Definitely fun now. My hope is, with this being a little vehicle, that we could get a G.I. Joe classified version of this one of these days. I guess we'll have to stay and see what happens in the future here, but I think this one could be one that could be on the table for the future for us, and man, I'll be here for it because this is my favorite Destro figure of all time. But what say you guys and gals out there in YouTube land? You got your top 5 list together? Make sure you put it together. Make sure you put it in order. That is the fun part. That is the hard part. But a lot of fun talking Destro here today on the channel. And of course, every single week, we got a top 5 list over on this channel. Make sure you do subscribe. You don't want to miss out on any of these. And of course, don't forget to like this video. Always helps the channel grow, that kind of fun stuff. So make sure you give the old Hacksaw Jim Duggan thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, as I did say. And then don't forget about the Patreon for early access to videos like this, bonus content, exclusive content, giveaways, Q&As, you name it. All going down over there on the old Patreon channel, and best of all, you do support the channel. You can also support the channel over at ProWrestlingTees.com. Search Kyle Peterson. Don't forget social media. SirPaul64 on the X, _Kyle_Peterson on Threads and on Instagram. So for the Destro Top 5, I'm Kyle. See you guys all real soon.